I remember the exact moment I first saw it. It was a Tuesday night, the kind that drags on in silence after a long day at the office. I'd just locked up the house, double-checked the doors like always, and headed to bed. No guests, no unexpected visitors, just me, alone in my quiet suburban home on Elm Street. But when I woke up the next morning and pulled up the security camera feed on my phone, there it was, a shadowy figure standing in the corner of my living room, right by the bookshelf at 2:17 a.m. I hadn't been down there. No one had. Yet the timestamp didn't lie, and neither did the clear outline of a person who simply shouldn't have been there. My name is Alex Harper, and I've lived in this modest two-story house in Willow Creek for the past 5 years. It's one of those small towns in upstate New York where everyone knows your business but pretends not to. The neighborhood is all neat lawns and white picket fences, the kind of place where kids ride bikes until dusk and folks wave from their porches. I bought the house after my divorce. Nothing dramatic, just a mutual agreement that we were better apart. Now it's just me, a graphic designer working remotely most days, with my routines carved out like grooves in the floorboards. Coffee at 7, emails until noon, a walk around the block in the afternoon if the weather's decent. The security system was my one indulgence after moving in. I'd read too many stories about break-ins in quiet places like this. 4 cameras, front door, backyard, garage, and one inside overlooking the living room and kitchen. Motion activated, high res, the works. It gave me peace of mind. Or so I thought. That morning started normal enough. I shuffled downstairs in my robe, the hardwood creaking under my feet the way it always did. The house smelled faintly of last night's takeout from the diner on Main Street, greasy burgers and fries that I'd eaten alone in front of the TV. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the beige carpet. I poured my coffee, black and strong, and scrolled through my phone while it brewed. That's when I decided to check the overnight footage, just out of habit. The app loaded quickly, showing a grid of thumbnails. Everything looked fine at first, the front door unmoving, the backyard empty except for a raccoon sniffing around the trash bins at midnight. But the indoor camera, that one, made my stomach twist. I replayed it 3 times before I could process what I was seeing. At 2:17 a.m., the living room light was off. But the camera's night vision kicked in, painting everything in that eerie green glow. There, in the far corner near the bookshelf, was the silhouette. Tall, maybe 6 feet, standing perfectly still. No movement, no sound, just a dark shape against the wall, like it was listening or waiting. It lingered for exactly 47 seconds before fading back into the shadows, as if it had simply stepped out of frame. I paused the video, zoomed in. The details were blurry, but I could make out the outline of a coat, perhaps, or a hat pulled low. My heart picked up, but I told myself it was a glitch. Cameras glitch. Shadows play tricks. I'd probably left a coat hanging on the door or something innocuous. Shaking it off, I went about my day. Work called, deadlines for a client's logo redesign, and I buried myself in Photoshop, the hum of my computer fan, the only company I needed. By lunchtime, the unease had faded to a dull hum. I stepped out to the mailbox, waving at Mrs. Ellis across the street as she watered her roses. "Beautiful day, Alex," she called, her voice cheerful as ever. I nodded, grabbing the stack of bills and junk mail. Back inside, I noticed something off, though. The bookshelf. Had I left that book out? The worn copy of The Great Gatsby that I kept on the middle shelf was now slightly askew, pushed forward like someone had brushed against it. I straightened it, frowning. Wind from the AC vent, maybe, or I must have bumped it myself without remembering. The afternoon dragged on. I took my usual walk, past the row of identical houses with their manicured hedges and American flags fluttering lazily in the breeze. Willow Creek felt safe, predictable. The local grocery store with its flickering neon sign, the gas station where old-timers swapped stories over coffee, But as I looped back home, a prickling sensation started at the base of my neck, like eyes on me from behind the curtains. I glanced over my shoulder, but the street was empty. Paranoia, I figured. Too much screen time, not enough sleep. Dinner was simple. A frozen pizza from the fridge, eaten at the kitchen table while I scrolled news on my tablet. The house settled around me with its familiar sounds, the fridge humming, the distant murmur of traffic from the highway a mile out. But when I cleared the plates and rinsed them in the sink, I heard it, a soft creak from upstairs, like footsteps on the landing. I froze, water dripping from my hands. The house was old. It had its noises, settling wood, expanding pipes. Still, I wiped my hands and climbed the stairs slowly, flicking on the hall light. Nothing. The bedroom door was ajar, just as I'd left it. I checked the closets, the bathroom, even the attic pull-down, which I hadn't touched in months, empty, quiet. By bedtime, the morning's footage nagged at me again. I pulled it up on my laptop this time, sitting cross-legged on the bed with the glow illuminating my face. Rewind to 2:17. There it was, undeniable. But now, watching closer, I noticed something else. In the seconds before the figure appeared, the air seemed to shift. A faint ripple on the screen, like heat haze, distorting the bookshelf for a split second. Then the shape materialized. I leaned in, breath shallow. Was that my imagination? Or had the camera caught something impossible? I fast-forwarded through the rest of the night. No more activity. But as I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, doubt crept in. What if it wasn't a glitch? What if someone or something had been in my house while I slept upstairs, oblivious? I didn't sleep much that night. The creaks seemed louder, the shadows deeper. By dawn, I was back at the laptop, combing through older footage. Days, weeks back. At first, nothing. Then a pattern. Subtle, but there. A similar shadow in the garage cam 2 nights ago, lingering by the workbench. And last Thursday, a flicker in the backyard feed, gone in an instant. My pulse raced as I marked the timestamps. It couldn't be real. But the evidence stared back at me, cold and unblinking. I was alone, wasn't I? Or had the house been keeping secrets all along? The next day unfolded like a fog rolling in from the lake, thick and disorienting. I woke to the insistent beep of my alarm, my eyes gritty from the fragmented sleep. The bedroom window framed a grey sky over Willow Creek, the kind that promised rain but held back just to tease. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, the events of the previous night replaying in my mind like a loop I couldn't pause. The footage, the patterns, it all felt too deliberate now, too insistent to dismiss as tricks of the light or faulty wiring. But I had a life to live, deadlines breathing down my neck, so I pushed it aside and swung my legs over the edge of the bed. Downstairs, the kitchen greeted me with its usual bland comfort. The coffee maker gurgling to life, the faint scent of yesterday's pizza lingering in the air. I fixed a bowl of cereal, the crunch of flakes against my teeth the only sound breaking the quiet. As I ate, my phone sat on the table, screen dark but tempting. I resisted checking the app again. Not yet. Instead, I opened my laptop and dove into work. The glow of design software pulling me into a rhythm of layers and colors. A logo for a local real estate firm. Nothing groundbreaking, but it demanded focus. Hours slipped by, the outside world reduced to the patter of rain starting against the window panes. By mid-morning, the unease had settled into a low thrum, like an engine idling in the distance. I saved my file and stood to stretch, my back cracking in protest. That's when I noticed the mail from yesterday still scattered on the counter. I gathered it up, sorting through the envelopes, utility bills, a flyer for the county fair next month, the usual detritus of suburban life. But one piece caught my eye. A plain white envelope with no return address, postmarked from Albany, just a 2-hour drive away. Inside was a single sheet of paper, blank except for a faint smudge in the corner, like an ink blot or a thumbprint. No writing, no stamp, just empty space staring back at me. I turned it over, held it to the light. Nothing. A prank? Misdelivered mail? In Willow Creek, anonymous notes weren't the norm. Folks here preferred gossip over the fence to anything covert. I set it aside, chalking it up to some mix-up at the post office, but the blankness lingered in my thoughts as I returned to my desk. The rain picked up, drumming steadily on the roof, turning the afternoon into an early twilight. I glanced at the security app thumbnail. Overnight feed, clear, no alerts. Relief washed over me, brief and shallow, like a sip of water in a drought. Maybe it was over. Whatever it was, maybe the shadows were just that. Shadows from a life too solitary, too wrapped up in routines that left room for imagination to fill the gaps. But as the day wore on, the house began to feel heavier, its walls pressing in with a subtle insistence. I stepped into the living room to grab a book, something light, a thriller to distract me, and paused by the bookshelf. The copy of The Great Gatsby was straight now, just as I'd left it, but my eyes snagged on the shelf below. A small wooden box, one I'd inherited from my grandfather, sat slightly askew. It held old photos, faded snapshots of family gatherings in backyards, much like this one. I hadn't opened it in months. Had I moved it? No, I was sure of that. I reached for it, fingers brushing the lid. And for a split second, the air felt cooler there, as if a draft had slipped through an unseen crack. I pulled back, unsettled, and left it be. The isolation crept in then, uninvited but persistent. Willow Creek was a place of connections, however superficial. Neighbors borrowing tools, waving cars past on the narrow streets. But today, it all felt distant. I texted my sister in Rochester, a casual, "How's the week going?" that went unanswered for hours. Her replies were usually prompt, laced with complaints about her kids or the latest office drama. Nothing came. I paced the kitchen, the linoleum cool under my socks, and decided on a drive to clear my head. The rain had eased to a mist, veiling the world in soft focus as I backed out of the driveway. Mrs. Ellis was on her porch again, bundled in a sweater, but she didn't wave this time. Just watched me go, her expression unreadable through the drizzle. The road out of town wound past fields dotted with silos, the highway a straight shot toward the next small cluster of lights. I stopped at the gas station on the edge of Willow Creek, the one with the buzzing fluorescent sign and the coffee that tasted like regret. Inside, the clerk, a grizzled man named Hank, who'd been there since I was a kid, nodded as I paid for a fill-up. "Wet one today, eh?" he said, his voice gravelly over the hum of the cooler. I murmured agreement, but my eyes drifted to the security camera above the counter, its red light blinking steadily. How many eyes were out there, watching without being seen? Hank noticed my stare. "Keeps the riffraff out," he grunted, handing over my change. "Though in a town like this you don't need much." Back home, the house welcomed me with silence, the kind that amplifies every small sound. I hung my keys on the hook by the door, right where they belonged, and headed upstairs to change. In the hallway mirror, my reflection looked drawn, eyes shadowed like the figure in the footage. I turned away quickly, but not before noticing the bathroom door, cracked open an inch. I'd closed it that morning, hadn't I? A habit from living alone, keeping spaces contained. I nudged it wider, the hinges whispering. Empty towels on the rack, toothpaste cap left askew on the sink. Nothing amiss. Yet the doubt gnawed deeper, a quiet erosion of certainty. Evening fell early, the sky bruising purple beyond the windows. I ordered takeout from the diner, chicken soup this time, something warm to chase the chill, and ate it on the couch, the TV murmuring a sitcom laugh track that felt mocking in the empty room. Midway through the bowl, my phone buzzed. The security app, a motion alert from the indoor camera. My spoon clattered against the ceramic. Heart thudding, I opened the feed live. The living room appeared normal. the bookshelf unmoved, the carpet still, but then a flicker. Not a full figure this time, just a distortion in the air, like heat rising from pavement on a summer day. It hovered near the same corner, lasting only seconds before smoothing out. No shape, no presence, but enough to send a shiver racing down my spine. I didn't investigate right away. Instead, I sat frozen, soup cooling untouched, listening to the house breathe around me. The fridge cycled on with a low hum. The clock ticked steadily on the wall. Repetition, that's what it was. The same spot, the same hour, creeping toward midnight. Was I imagining the pattern, projecting fears onto pixels? Or was the house replaying something, looping an echo I couldn't hear? The blank envelope resurfaced in my mind, its emptiness a mirror to the questions piling up. I rose, finally, arms prickling, and dimmed the lights, retreating upstairs. But as I passed the bookshelf, I swore the wooden box had shifted again, just a fraction, inviting me to look closer. Sleep evaded me once more. The bed a tangle of sheets and half-formed thoughts. Outside, the rain returned, tapping insistently against the glass like fingers seeking entry. Downstairs, I knew the camera watched, unblinking, capturing whatever came next. And in the quiet hours, as my mind drifted toward exhaustion, I wondered if the figure wasn't the intruder at all. If perhaps it was me, caught in a reflection I hadn't recognized. The isolation wrapped tighter, a subtle noose, pulling me into the uncertainty of what the night might reveal. The rain had turned relentless by the time I finally drifted off, a steady drum that blurred the line between comfort and confinement. Dreams came in fragments, shadowy figures dissolving into fog, bookshelves stretching into endless corridors, my own voice echoing questions I couldn't answer. I woke before dawn, the house cloaked in that pre-light hush, the kind that makes every creak feel personal. My phone lay on the nightstand, screen glowing faintly with unread notifications. Work emails, probably, but one icon stood out, the security app time-stamped at 3:42 a.m., a motion alert. I hadn't heard it vibrate. Maybe the storm had drowned it out. I sat up, the sheets pooling around my waist, and tapped the screen. The live feed loaded slowly, rain-streaked windows framing the darkness outside. The indoor camera showed the living room empty, the bookshelf a monolithic shape in the green night vision. But the recorded clip pulled me in, breath held. There it was again, not the full figure this time, but a suggestion, a tall outline, blurred at the edges, materializing near the corner for just 20 seconds. It didn't move, didn't turn, but as it faded, the air rippled once more, distorting the frame like a pebble dropped in still water. I replayed it, zooming in on the bookshelf. The wooden box, my grandfather's, sat precisely as I'd left it. But in the video, for a heartbeat, it seemed to tilt as if nudged by an invisible hand. Doubt flooded in, cold and clarifying. Was this the same entity, revisiting the same spot, or was my mind editing the footage, filling gaps with fear? I closed the app and forced myself downstairs, the stairs groaning under my weight like reluctant confessions. The kitchen clock read 5:17, too early for coffee, but I brewed it anyway. The machine's hiss, a small anchor in the quiet. As the pot filled, I glanced at the blank envelope on the counter, its emptiness mocking me. I picked it up, turning it in the dim light from the window. The smudge in the corner, had it been there before, or was it darker now? A fingerprint, perhaps, pressed with intent. I dropped it like it burned, watching it flutter to the floor. The morning unfolded in fits and starts. I tried work, sketching rough concepts for the real estate logo, but my hand hesitated over the tablet, lines coming out jagged and uncertain. Outside, Willow Creek stirred slowly, a neighbor's truck rumbling to life, the distant call of a dog testing the wet air. I texted my sister again, "Everything okay?" And this time dots appeared, then vanished. No reply. The isolation sharpened, turning the house into a bubble where time stretched thin. By noon, the rain had cleared, leaving puddles that mirrored the overcast sky like fractured screens. I needed air, movement, something to shake the cobwebs. Grabbing my jacket, I headed out for a longer walk, past the familiar landmarks. The community park with its empty swings creaking in the breeze. The old library on Maple Avenue, where I'd spent childhood summers lost in stories. The streets were quiet, most folks at jobs in the city or hunkered down with their routines. But as I turned onto Oak Lane, a prickling started again, that sense of being observed. I scanned the houses, curtains still, driveways empty, but one window caught my eye, Mrs. Ellis's. The lace parted just enough to reveal a silhouette. She stood there, unmoving, before stepping back. Coincidence, I told myself. Neighbors watch out for each other here. Back home, the door clicked shut behind me, sealing in the damp chill. I hung my jacket, noticing the keys on the hook, swaying slightly, though I'd closed the door gently. A draft? The windows were sealed tight. Shrugging it off, I moved to the living room, drawn inexorably to the bookshelf. The wooden box called to me now, its lid a question mark. I lifted it carefully, the wood cool and smooth under my fingers. Inside, the photos lay stacked. Yellowed prints of grandparents at picnics, my parents young and laughing on a porch swing much like this one. But as I sifted through them, one slipped free, a snapshot I didn't recognize. It showed the living room, current day, sunlight slanting through the blinds. And there, in the corner by the bookshelf, a faint blur, like a person caught mid-step. My hands trembled. This photo was from last summer, before the divorce finalized, when life felt solid. Had it always been there, overlooked? Or had someone placed it, bridging past and present? The discovery hit like a slow wave, eroding the foundations of what I thought I knew. I replaced the photos, closed the box, and backed away, pulse echoing in my ears. The house felt alive then, watchful, its corners holding breaths I couldn't see. I checked the security app obsessively, daytime feeds showing nothing but my own movements, looping back at me like accusations. Who was I becoming, chasing ghosts in my own home? Paranoia, the doctors called it in those articles I'd skimmed after the divorce, a side effect of solitude. But the patterns refused to dissolve. The figure, the ripples, the shifted objects. Repetition bred certainty, whispering that I wasn't alone, not truly. Afternoon bled into evening, the light fading to a muted grey. I avoided the living room, working upstairs in the spare bedroom that doubled as my office, door cracked to listen for sounds below. The phone stayed silent. No sister, no clients pushing back on deadlines. When hunger gnawed, I heated leftovers in the microwave, eating standing at the counter, eyes on the indoor camera feed, clear, empty. But as dusk settled, another alert pinged, backyard motion at 6:28. I switched to that view, heart climbing. The yard was sodden, leaves plastered to the grass, but no figure, just a stray cat darting across the fence line. False alarm. Relief mingled with frustration, the system's vigilance mirroring my own fraying nerves. Night crept in, the house dimming room by room. I drew the curtains early, blocking the streetlight's glow, and settled on the couch with a book, not a thriller this time, but a biography of some forgotten inventor, dry enough to ground me. The words blurred after a page, my mind replaying the photo, the envelope, the endless footage. Surveillance everywhere, cameras in my home, eyes from neighbors' windows, even the gas station's unblinking lens. Was that the point? To make me feel seen, exposed, without ever showing a face? Isolation twisted into something sharper, a sense that the intruder wasn't breaking in, but pulling me apart from within. By 10, exhaustion tugged, but sleep felt like surrender. I checked the feeds one last time, all quiet, and climbed the stairs, the creaks louder now, deliberate. In the bedroom, I paused at the mirror, studying my reflection, hollow cheeks, eyes darting like the shadows I chased. For a moment, the glass seemed to fog, a breath not my own clouding the surface. I wiped it clear, hand lingering, and turned away. Lying in bed, the rain resumed its patter, a lullaby laced with warning. Downstairs the camera watched, faithful and cold. Whatever came next, it would capture it, me unraveling or the truth stepping from the dark. The night stretched, heavy with unspoken possibilities, and I wondered how long I could pretend the echoes weren't calling my name. The hours blurred into a restless vigil, the rain's rhythm syncing with the erratic beat of my heart. I lay there, eyes fixed on the ceiling's faint cracks, tracing patterns that might have been there all along or newly etched by some unseen force. The security app stayed open on my phone, propped against the lamp, its battery icon a mocking sliver of green. Every few minutes, I'd glance at it, half expecting another alert to shatter the fragile quiet. But nothing came, just the house, breathing in time with the storm, its walls whispering doubts that coiled tighter with each passing second. By morning, the world outside had softened to a drizzly haze, the kind that clings to Willow Creek like a half-remembered dream. I rose early, the floorboards cool against my bare feet, and padded downstairs without turning on the lights. The living room emerged from the gloom, the bookshelf a sentinel in the corner, the wooden box closed and innocent on its shelf. I avoided looking at it directly, busying myself with the coffee maker instead. The machine gurgled to life, steam rising like a sigh. But as I waited, my gaze drifted to the indoor camera mounted high on the wall. Its lens stared back, impartial and ever watchful, capturing the mundane ritual of my morning. Had it always felt so judgmental? Or was that my own projections seeping into the circuits? The first sip burned my tongue, grounding me just enough to check the overnight footage. I pulled up the app at the kitchen table, the screen's glow harsh against the dim room. The clip from 3:42 played out as before, the blurred outline, the ripple, the tilt of the box that now seemed less like a glitch and more like a deliberate tease. I paused it there, frame by frame, searching for details I'd missed. The shadow's edges softened into the bookshelf spines, blending with titles I'd read a dozen times. Hemingway, Salinger, stories of isolation that suddenly felt too close to home. No face, no defining feature, just presence, insistent and undefined. I minimized the video, but the image lingered. A after-image burned into my retinas. Work waited upstairs, but motivation had evaporated like morning mist. I sat at my desk, the spare room's window overlooking the backyard, where puddles pooled like scattered thoughts. The real estate logo stared back from the screen, half-formed and uninspired, my stylus hovering uselessly. Instead of drawing, I found myself scrolling through the app's archive again, deeper this time. Months back, before the divorce, before the house had started to feel like a puzzle with missing pieces. Subtle anomalies surfaced. A flicker in the garage at odd hours, a doorframe that seemed to warp for a split second in the hallway feed. Not every night, but enough to form a thread, fragile yet undeniable. Repetition. It was the repetition that clawed at me, turning coincidence into something orchestrated, as if the house itself were replaying a memory I hadn't lived. The isolation deepened with the grey light filtering through the blinds. No calls from clients, no neighborly knock at the door. I texted a coworker about the logo deadline, the message delivering with a soft whoosh, but no response came. Willow Creek's quiet had always been a comfort, a buffer against the city's chaos, but now it amplified the emptiness. The diner on Main Street called to me midday, a break from the walls closing in. I drove the short distance, wipers swiping lazily at the drizzle, past houses where lights flickered on in kitchens, families moving like shadows behind curtains. The diner was half empty, its vinyl booths worn smooth by years of locals nursing coffees, and plates of eggs over easy. I slid into a corner stool, ordering the usual club sandwich. The waitress, Lila with her name tag crooked, nodding without her usual chatter. As I ate, the wall-mounted TV droned news about a storm front moving east, but my eyes wandered to the security camera above the register. Another eye, blinking red, scanning the room's banal rhythm. A couple arguing softly over pie, an old man flipping through a newspaper. Hank from the gas station sat 2 stools down, nursing black coffee, his gaze distant. I almost mentioned the footage, the box, the photo, words bubbling up like a confession, but they stuck in my throat. What would I say? That my house was haunted by echoes? He'd laugh it off, blame the divorce stress, and I'd be the guy spinning tales in a town that preferred facts wrapped in small talk. Driving back, the road stretched empty, flanked by sodden fields and the occasional silo standing sentinel. My mind replayed the photo from the box, the blur in the corner, time-stamped to a sunny afternoon I'd spent alone, sketching in the living room. Had I taken that picture myself, forgotten in the haze of unpacking, or had it been slipped in later, a breadcrumb leading nowhere? The driveway welcomed me with its familiar curve, but as I pulled in, the mailbox flap caught my eye. Ajar, though I'd emptied it days ago. Inside, another envelope identical to the first. Plain white, no address, postmarked Albany. My fingers trembled as I slit it open. Blank again, but this time, 2 smudges in the corner, darker, like overlapping prints. A message in absence, perhaps, or just the post office's carelessness. I crumpled it in my fist, the paper crackling like dry leaves. Inside, the house felt altered, charged with the weight of my discoveries. I dropped the envelope on the counter and headed straight for the bookshelf, the wooden box drawing me like a magnet. Lifting the lid, I sifted through the photos once more, heart pounding. The strange snapshot was still there, nestled among the others, its blur unchanged. But now, holding it to the light, I noticed something new. A faint reflection in the window behind the figure, distorted but suggestive, a shape that mirrored my own silhouette, as if I'd been standing there all along, unseen. The realization washed over me cold and slow, blurring the line between observer and observed. Was the figure me, fragmented and forgotten? Or was it pulling pieces of my life into its fold, rewriting the narrative one shadow at a time? The afternoon waned in a fog of avoidance. I locked myself in the office, forcing lines onto the digital canvas. But every few minutes, I'd check the app, live feeds showing empty rooms, the backyard cat prowling again under the eaves. Vigilance turned to exhaustion, the screens multiplying my solitude. By evening, the rain had stopped, leaving the air thick and still, the kind that carries sounds from blocks away. I ventured downstairs for dinner, a simple salad from the fridge, eaten at the table with the lights low. The blank envelopes sat stacked now, their emptiness a growing accusation. Why Albany? A city I'd visited once post-divorce, wandering anonymous streets to clear my head. Coincidence, or a thread tying back to me? As night fell, the house amplified its subtle symphony, a pipe groaning in the walls, the fridge's hum shifting pitch. I dimmed the living room lamp and settled on the couch. The biography forgotten in my lap. The security app pinged softly, an indoor motion alert at 9:47. I opened it, breath catching. The feed showed the bookshelf, the box lid cracked open just an inch, though I'd closed it hours ago. No figure, no ripple, but the air shimmered faintly as if disturbed by a passing breath. I rose slowly, crossing the room on numb feet, the carpet muffling my steps. The box was, as it appeared, lid ajar, photos undisturbed inside. But the air felt cooler there, laced with a scent I couldn't place, faint, like old paper and rain-damp earth. Doubt crested then, a wave eroding the shores of reason. I wasn't imagining this. The evidence layered upon itself, building a cage of questions. Who, or what, was watching me watch it? The isolation pressed in, turning the house into a mirror maze where every reflection hinted at intrusion. I retreated upstairs, locking the bedroom door out of habit, though locks meant little to shadows. Lying in the dark, the camera feeds open on my phone. I listened to the night unfold, patterns repeated, echoes called, and in the quiet I felt the boundaries of self dissolving, piece by careful piece. Tomorrow, I'd confront it, call someone, check the wiring, anything to break the loop. But deep down I knew the truth wasn't in the footage. It was in the spaces between, waiting for me to step into the frame. The night deepened into that profound stillness where even the rain's absence felt like a held breath. I lay in bed, the phone's screen casting a pale rectangle on the ceiling, its feeds cycling through empty rooms like a mantra of denial. The indoor camera showed the living room bathed in night vision's ghostly green, the bookshelf unmoving, the wooden box now fully closed after I'd nudged it shut earlier. No alerts since 9:47, but the quiet gnawed at me heavier than any sound. Willow Creek slept beyond the windows, its scattered lights winking like distant stars. Indifferent to the unraveling inside my walls, I closed my eyes, willing sleep to come, but thoughts looped endlessly. The blurred photo, the envelopes from Albany, the ripples that defied explanation. Each one a thread, pulling tighter around the core of who I was, or who I thought I was. Dawn arrived muted, the sky a uniform slate that seeped through the curtains like diluted ink. I hadn't slept more than an hour straight, jolting awake at every imagined creak, my body heavy with the residue of vigilance. Downstairs, the coffee maker waited, its routine a fragile ritual against the chaos. I brewed a pot, stronger than usual, the aroma filling the kitchen with false normalcy. As it dripped, I pulled up the app again, scrolling through the night's logs. Nothing new. No figures, no distortions. Relief flickered, tentative, but undercut by the suspicion that absence was just another layer of the game. I sipped the coffee black, standing at the window overlooking the backyard, where dew clung to the grass like unshed tears. The neighborhood stirred lazily, a car humming down Elm Street, the faint clink of a mailbox being emptied across the way. Life persisting, untouched by my private unraveling. Work loomed, but focus eluded me like smoke. I carried my mug upstairs to the office, the stairs' familiar groan now laced with accusation. At the desk, the laptop screen bloomed to life, the real estate logo file mocking its own incompleteness. I traced lines half-heartedly, but my eyes kept drifting to the phone prop nearby, the app's icon a siren call. Instead of designing, I delved deeper into the archives, cross-referencing timestamps against a calendar I'd pulled up. The anomalies clustered around dates that tugged at memory. The night after my divorce papers arrived, a week when I'd driven to Albany alone, wandering its crowded sidewalks to escape the echo of an empty house. The envelope's postmarks, could they be echoes of that trip? Mailed back to me by some forgotten part of myself? The thought chilled me, blurring the line between intruder and invitation. By mid-morning, the isolation had calcified, turning the house into a vault of reflections. No texts from my sister, no emails from clients, just the hum of the computer and the distant murmur of a lawnmower starting up outside. I paced the hallway, pausing at the spare room door, its frame casting a shadow that seemed to lean inward. The bathroom mirror waited like a confessor, and I confronted it briefly, my face gaunt, eyes ringed with fatigue. The man staring back a stranger, pieced from fragments. Had the figure in the footage looked like this, hollow, waiting? I turned away, descending to the living room, drawn once more to the bookshelf. The wooden box sat sentinel, its presence a quiet demand. I lifted the lid without hesitation this time, the photos spilling slightly under my fingers. There, amid the familiar faces, the strange snapshot lay exposed. I held it up, angling it toward the window's light, and that's when the full weight settled. The blur in the corner wasn't just a shape. It aligned perfectly with where I'd stood that afternoon last summer, sketching at the coffee table, the sun warm on my back. But in the photo, my own form was absent, erased, as if the camera had captured only the echo, the space I'd occupied moments before, the reflection in the glass behind it. It wasn't mine, not quite. Taller, perhaps, or angled wrong. Like a version of me viewed from an impossible vantage. My breath caught, the room tilting slightly. Had I taken this? Or had the house preserved a moment where I'd slipped out of frame, leaving something else in my place? The realization unfolded slowly. A silent unraveling in the chest. It wasn't an intruder breaking in. It was the house reflecting back the fractures I'd ignored, the solitude after the divorce, the routines that masked a growing emptiness, the trips to Albany where I'd confronted ghosts of what was lost. The footage, the ripples, the shifted objects, they were manifestations of that, projections from a mind fraying at the edges, capturing what I couldn't face. Myself, fragmented and fleeting, haunting the spaces I called home. No one else had entered. I'd been inviting the shadows all along, replaying doubts in the unblinking eye of the camera. The envelopes, blank and insistent, were notes from that other me, urging acknowledgement without words. I set the photo down, hands steady now, the cool wood of the box grounding me. The living room felt vast, yet intimate, its corners no longer threatening, but revealing. Outside, Willow Creek hummed on, a child's laughter drifting from the park, the postman's truck rattling past. I could call someone, a technician for the cameras, a friend for coffee at the diner. But the urge faded. Confrontation meant naming it, and in the naming, losing the ambiguity that had sustained me. Instead, I closed the box, straightened the bookshelf, and returned to the kitchen. The coffee had gone cold, but I poured another cup, the steam rising like a veil lifting. Afternoon light filtered in, softening the edges, and I sat at the table, phone in hand. The app showed live feeds, empty rooms, the backyard stirring with birds under the eaves. No alerts, no patterns breaking the surface. But as I watched, a faint ripple ghosted across the indoor screen, just a breath, a distortion in the air by the bookshelf. It lasted a second, then smoothed away, leaving the frame pristine. I didn't zoom in, didn't replay. Instead, I set the phone face down, the weight of certainty settling like dust after a storm. Evening came gently, the sky clearing to a bruised lavender. I cooked a simple meal, pasta from the pantry, sauce simmering on the stove, the aromas weaving through the house like threads mending invisible rips. Eating alone at the table felt less like isolation and more like quiet companionship, the chair opposite empty, but no longer echoing. The security system hummed in the background, its cameras vigilant sentinels, capturing not intrusions, but the subtle dance of living. Upstairs, the bed waited, sheets smoothed, the night beyond the window, a canvas of stars over Willow Creek. As I turned off the lights one by one, the house exhaled, its sounds familiar and unthreatening, the fridge's steady pulse, the faint tick of the clock. In the bedroom, I glanced at the phone one last time. No notifications, just the grid of thumbnails showing stillness. Sleep came easier, pulling me under without resistance, dreams dissolving into soft voids without shapes or pursuits. But in the deepest hour, as the world held its breath, I wondered if the ripple would return, a gentle reminder that some presences linger not to harm, but to mirror. The camera would record it, faithful as ever, and in the morning I'd watch, or perhaps not, leaving the echo to fade into the rhythm of another day.